Okay, with a book name like How to Win at the Sport of Business, investor and owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, sits on a net worth of $4.6 billion. So you can only wonder what his intentions are with this book. I've learned from Elon Musk in his Joe Rogan interview, and my own experience, actually, that it's generally a healthier, easier perspective to live with, to simply give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that they're not really just like evil or anything like that. Although Mark does talk about it a little in the beginning, I'm convinced that solely based on the subtitle, if I can do it, you can do it, it's to empower people and inform them at the same time. You can't expect a multi-billionaire to have advice that's not literally worth hearing out, at least. So that's why I got this book, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And let's talk about it. He starts Chapter 1 by talking about his experience starting with business in general. If you get this book, just know that a lot of the thoughts that he was having, I had a lot of those too, and I still kind of do. And if you get the book and you can say the same, well, we are not twins. We are
triplets.
Chapter 2 is where you smash the like button if you haven't already for the YouTube algorithm and ranking and SEO and all this other stuff, and I really appreciate it because so much work goes into making these videos. You'd be surprised. A lot of work really goes into making these videos. And it gets really interesting. He tells us his experience getting good at sales. He had no idea what he was doing because he didn't really know the product. He was getting good with people at the time though. But then something happened, which is in the book, and he got fired and decided to start a company, which is he called it Micro Solutions. And with the base of people he already knew and worked with in the past, it was a lot easier for him to make decisions from the beginning of that company. So it was something that he actually pulled off. What I love about books like these is that they can tell you maybe two things. One is that, okay, yes, the world is changing fast, and that means there's like an increasing amount of options, decisions, choices everywhere, just waiting to be made. However, there's an upside to that. If you don't believe me, let me repeat that last sentence, because Mark Cuban started his company at a time when there was nothing close to as many choices as we have now. The world is changing fast, and there is an increasing amount of options to be picked from. And to start with, all you really need is just one, despite that, and that's incredibly important. That, and the second thing is that if you're doing anything he did in this book that he thinks helped him move in the right direction, maybe doing the same thing or things of a similar nature can help you go in a direction you want to go to. And what direction do you want to go in? I mean, a lot of people, one of the first things people will say nowadays is probably making a lot of money. The general population probably doesn't want to have less money, seeing as the middle class seems to be like reportedly and quickly disappearing. So it's like, get books like this to identify the actions and causes that can make you more money. Learn them, learn all about them, immerse yourself in the idea of it, but just making more money. Find one thing and focus on it. You want to know why? I mean, I'm not as successful as Mark Cuban, but based on what I know, and especially what he says in the book, I'm really willing to bet on that advice. So let's do it together. Speaking of which, I loved this next part because it reminds me of myself, but more importantly, if you're watching this, it also kind of reminds me of you. Everything I read was public. Anyone could buy the same books and magazines. The same information was available to anyone who wanted it. As it turns out, most people didn't. There was a lot of just very concrete advice in this book. The actual self-packaging of the book says that you can do this, but there's a lot more to it. When you start to unpackage the book and look at what it says, it's like, here, if you want to do it, apply this and try this and keep that in mind. There's a great stock of insights that I gained from the book, and here are a few. Always ask yourself, how can someone put me out of business? Always run your business like you're going to be competing with the biggest technology companies in the industry. Always win the battles you're in first. Then worry about expansion internationally and into new businesses. There are also a ton of other ones. He also talks about his philosophy too on things like why it's valuable to complain about things and how people actually benefit from doing that. He talks about how to get a job, especially after you get fired from your current or previous one, and you have a whole moment of,
I don't know what to do here. What do I do?
He sort of finishes it up with a 12 rules of business startups and 12 mantras of business success. Now, keep in mind, this is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban has a habit of
smashing that like button,
but Mark Cuban is also a great mentor for executives and investors. If you don't believe me, Ask around, or hell, check out the book. A philosophy on investors he has in this book as well, and when and why to seek out investors and why not to. A philosophy on customer feedback, and when and how and why to listen to it, and if not, what to do instead and how to do it. Seeing as there are only 3 chapters and this is a quick audiobook, it's only like 2.5 hours long, the organization of the book itself is iffy. I think I'd have to read it to really judge, as it's this aggregate or curation of his thoroughly considered blog posts and email responses. The self-presentation is pretty direct. This book reminds me a little of The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, an amazing book on management. It's just super hard business advice. It's a lot more straight talk than motivation, but I found this book a little bit more basic. Of course, that doesn't make the information any less necessarily important to know. The uniqueness of the concept is I mean, it's Mark Cuban. I don't know, man. A lot of people write books on how to win at business, but Mark Cuban, he's Mark Cuban, okay? I describe the energy of this book as instructive. It's useful and willing, and it's almost enthusiastic in a way. So on a 1 to 5 tier level type of thing, a scale that I'm still experimentally developing, I would put this at tier 3 of 5. Quotes. Never turn your back on a closed deal. It would have been easy to judge effort by how many hours a day passed while I was at work. That's the worst way to measure effort. Effort is measured by setting goals and getting results. It doesn't matter how many times you almost get it right. No one's going to care or know about failures, and neither should you. Everyone has got the will to win. It's only those with the will to prepare who do win. The minute you take their money, the leverage falls completely to the investor. They control the destiny of your dreams, not you. Treat your customers like they own you, because they do. Kick your own ass before the competition does. Coffee is for closers, soda is free. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who's kind of looking to get their way in life, especially in America, and especially if you're also thinking of starting a business. If you already have a business, there are probably a good handful of things I'm sure you would get out of this. Again,
This is Mark Cuban we're talking about.
this book I recommend in those cases, and especially the last book I'm about to recommend in Direction 2. Direction 2, if you like this book, I recommend, if I were watching this video, this would maybe surprise me at first, but The Art of War by Sun Tzu, it's a classic strategy book. The most successful people in pretty much any field have probably read it. I found this book, How to Win at the Sport of Business, to be The Art of War is this book's ancestor. I'll put it that way. I definitely recommend checking out My Life and Work by Henry Ford, one of the best autobiographies I've ever heard, about his philosophy on a plethora of important things and how it was formed. It reminded me of this, but it's a little bit bigger and more sophisticated and more external, less mindset-based, more operation-based. This book and that book, despite how different they are a great pair when it comes to smashing that like button. My Life and Work by Henry Ford is probably this book's grandfather. I don't know why I'm making a family out of all these different books. But if that's the case, I recommend that book and How to Win at the Sport of Business's baby cousin, if you will, Sell or Be Sold by my hero, Grant Cardone. How to Win at the Sport of Business by Mark Cuban. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews, that and all the other books that I mentioned in this video. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know why people watch these far into my videos and they don't subscribe. If you did subscribe but you want to turn it up a notch, turn on the notification bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video. That would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.